Well, welcome to Bradford's Pens. This is going to be our first video on building pens and taking the various woods or acrylics to build the bodies of custom-made pens. We're going to start the process from the very beginning. This is what we call a pen blank. This particular one's 3/4 by 3/4 by 5 inches long. And we're going to be doing a pen from this, a very customized pen, by the way. And this process is going to start from the very beginning. We'll start with this particular pen blank, which is a wood called cocobolo, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So let's take it from the first step in preparing the blank for the pen. The first step in preparing the blank is to get it the proper length. Some pens require more than one piece. The particular one we're going to make out of the cocobolo blank is going to be 2 1/4 inches in length, and we only need a single piece. So we're going to mark that off, and then we're going to cut this off in the bandsaw. So we're going to cut our blank to 2 1/4. And our next step is to drill the center through the center of the blank. With blanks, we take a little bit, take our time going through, keep raising the drill so that it can clean out the remnants of what's already been cut. Our next step is to take the blank, and we're going to glue in this metal tube, which will form the basis for actually putting the pen together later on. So this will be the strength member inside the wood blank itself. And what we're going to do, we're going to mix up a 2-part epoxy resin, equal parts of the resin itself. It doesn't take much for one of these blanks, and the hardener. We have to mix that real well, otherwise it'll never set. Insert the tube, and we're rotating it as we go to spread the epoxy, and we're all set now. Now this is a fast acting epoxy, so we'll wait a short time, make sure that sets up well, and then we'll go on to the next step. Our next step is going to be to cut the edges off of the blank. This just makes it a little bit easier when you're turning, and in some wood blanks, the wood grain and everything else, you don't want to blow the blank, which would be actually splitting apart, and you'd have to start all over again. So we're going to cut all the corners off the edge of the blank here, and instead of being a 4-sided, it'll be an 8-sided device after we're finished here. And it'll be a little bit more round for when we put it on the lathe. To do that, I've got this little homemade jig, and what that allows us to do is take the blank, and this is held on by rubber bands, and we do have a supply because I just broke that one. But we'll put the blank in the jig, wrap the rubber band for tension. I normally have two, but this will work fine. And this rod, and anything can do as long as it's smooth, is actually an old antenna. And then we'll put it in the bandsaw, adjust our height so we got full clearance to go through. And then what we do is manually line up the corners. As you can see, it's locked into this 45-degree wedge, but when we start cutting, we're going to use the rod to actually hold it in there, and not just relying on the rubber bands. That way we get a nice clean cut. And now we've got the blank where we want it. And the next step, we're going to be squaring off the ends of the blank so it's nice and flush, and it's going to be perpendicular to the length of the blank. And we're going to do that next. We're going to take the blank, and now we have another homemade jig. And this is a 3/8 inch tube that we've got in here, and we're going to use the disc sander to clean that up so it's nice and perpendicular. Now we have the ends flush with the tube on both ends. And this particular pen that we're building is using a 3/8 inch core tube, so we have to use 3/8 inch bushings on this 7mm mandrel. We'll put that on there and then put some spacers between that and the end. And snug this up. And get ready to start turning this blank down. And once you can see that the blank is pretty well round now, and it cuts a lot easier once that's down. We'll bring it down to the final stage, and then we'll begin our sanding. Okay, we're going to start sanding this now, and going to start out with a 220 grit to bring this down. We're going to go for a luster finish on this as opposed to a real, or a satin finish as opposed to a real shiny finish. So we'll be taking this down just to about a 400 grit at the most. Particular piece, the cocobolo green is really got some nice markings on it. We did do a little bit of marking here just for accent with the chisel. Okay, we're going to apply the polish here. And we're going to burn it in. What a nice luster finish. Very nice piece of wood. Now you can see the components of the pen right here, and we'll be assembling those using the drill press as a compression tool to put all the pieces and parts together. Okay, we're going to start with the pen tip and the body. We'll be joining them together, and instead of having a drill bit in the drill press, we just got a big old bolt in there locked into the chuck. And then we'll carefully compress these until they are together. And then the last piece, take the tip off the pen, insert the cartridge through the front and the spring, and replace the tip. This just screws on for convenience. And there you can see by using this cocking lever, the pen tip comes out. Very nice pen. So this is a very special pen. It's also very heavy. I call it the Steampunk. And actually this is just going to be the cocobolo steampunk. The Electra has a circuit board in there, which we do have an example of that particular pen here. Different version of the same pen, but this one has a circuit board for a center section, and it also has the reverse with the brass, and this one has pewter for the metal arrangements on it, so they're a little bit different, but each one has its own unique characteristics. So if you're interested, let me know, and may be able to sell you one. Bye.